Hello everyone, it's Jessica. Today I wanted to come on and talk about how to use the catalog as an idea book. They used to actually be called idea books, and that's how I use them, is really for inspiration. If you notice in the catalogs, every now and then there will be something that says artwork tip, which is pretty cool, and they'll give a little technique or a way that you could create something that's really pretty. So what I wanted to do today is to see if I could figure out how to recreate this card. Now, I do not have this Bloom with Grace card making stamp set, although it is adorable, but I do have a stamp set that has a pumpkin on it, and so I thought I'd kind of make my own version just a little bit differently, but trying out this artwork tip of using some clear heat embossing for that pumpkin to create my own background on the card. So let me bring this up just a little bit so you can see it better. It's this card here on page 8 of the September and October seasonal catalog, okay? So what I've done is I've already kind of figured out what some of the different pieces need to be cut at. So this bottom piece is the Desert Rose paper, and it is the darker side that we want to use. The layer on top is Sangria, and again, I want the darker side. And so if you notice in the catalog, it's really subtle, but there is that Desert Rose piece on the bottom with just a really tiny reveal around it. And when I first was trying to cut it, you know, cutting this Sangria piece down just a 1/4 inch from my base was too much. Cutting it down 1/8 was not enough. So I kind of split the difference, and I will put all of the measurements there over here, but I will put them all in the links down below too. So I figured out what that should be. And then also I kind of played around with how I wanted the strips to go. So those are going to be layered on there. And then the other thing that's on here is this has one of those stitched brackets that are new, which is really cute, and I loved all of the stitched thin cuts, and I have a bunch of them, but I don't have that particular one. So instead I'm going to use the one that is the rectangle, okay? And I just use the smallest of the rectangles in that inner piece, because when you cut it out, you're going to get the inner piece that's got the stitched on it, and then the frame as well. So I just use the inner piece of the smallest rectangle, and I'm going to recreate it myself with this stamp set called Gobble Till You Wobble. So I'm going to use my pumpkin, and I think I'm going to make it a Thanksgiving card, so maybe I'll use this cute little turkey and one of these kinds of sayings. So that's what I'm going to do. So let's go ahead and see what we need to do to get things started. So the artwork tip is about kind of random stamping on your cardstock and then heat embossing it in clear powder. So it's going to give you a really subtle look, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and use my pumpkin stamp here. All right, and since we're using some embossing powder, I'm going to use my Versamark pad, and then I'm just going to, I guess, random stamp some pumpkins all over. Now I'm going to take my clear embossing powder and just kind of get myself a little piece of scrap paper here so that I don't make a giant mess. And I'm going to be really liberal and pouring it over. And I was trying to stamp quickly because I wasn't sure how long that ink would stay wet on there so that it would pick up my embossing powder. And then I usually just kind of do it on a scrap piece of paper with a fold in it, so that then I can go, oh good, it did work, like this. And tap off some of that excess. Don't want that part over there. I need to get one of those anti-static pouches, which works really well to make sure that your embossing powder goes where you want it to go. And now I'm going to take my heat gun and I'm going to go ahead and emboss this. Okay, and so now that I have heat embossed it, look at how pretty that turned out. I don't know if you guys can see in the light or not, but it just gives it a really subtle sheen with those pumpkins randomly stamped in the background. And I went ahead and attached that to the base of our card. And now the next step that we need to do is, in the original and the idea book and the catalog, it is stitched all the way around. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, they used some white thread for theirs, but I thought that maybe I would do some green because I like the green in that one particular strip. Now, I'm going to use my stitching guide that Close to My Heart used to sell. I use it all the time, and in fact, my son likes to borrow it to play with his cars, and he makes a little bridge. And one time, the bridge broke, but it's still usable, so that's why that's on there like that. So I'm going to go ahead and get this set up so that I can put some holes in for my stitching. Okay, I finished punching the holes all the way around the perimeter of that card, and then I stitched it with just some embroidery floss in this greenish color that kind of matches that green strip that we're going to end up putting on. So now we're ready to move on to those 3 little pennant banners that are on the front of the card. So if I look at the picture, it almost looks like this green one is maybe down first because it seems like the other 2 are layered over top of it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And they're just kind of off to the side a little bit. And it looks like the top of it is flush with the sangria and not with the base of the card itself. So just flush at the top of the sangria, but not flush with the very, very top of the card. So I'm going to put that one down first. And then I'm going to take the white floral strip, and this is all from that Bloom with Grace paper pack. In my cardstock, I just got the coordinating cardstock for that paper pack, and then that way I had all the colors I needed to match it up. And then the last one, this is Canary, excuse me, and we're going to be using the darker side of the Canary cardstock. So again, that's from that Bloom with Grace paper pack. And then this is just the coordinating cardstock that I'm using for the card base and this canary strip. Okay. All right. And then let's do that. Looks good. Ooh, maybe a little crooked. Don't want crooked. Sometimes we have these little imperfections, right? That's what makes it homemade. I did notice when I was punching my holes for my stitching that I didn't quite line up my corners very sharply, and I was a little annoyed with myself. But again, what are you gonna do unless I start it all over? It is what it is, so that's fine, okay? All right, so now we've got this part made, and the next part, like I said, in the actual picture in the idea book or catalog, it has one of those stitch brackets in here, and I don't have that one, so I'm gonna use that stitched rectangle, the inner piece of the smallest one. And it looks like that is just kind of coming over a little bit right here, and then we can stamp a little sentiment on it. And then this has a cluster of a flower and some leaves and some of that gold thread kind of going over the corner of it. So since I don't have the Bloom with Grace card making stamp, this is kind of where I'm going to deviate a little bit, not only with the rectangle, but kind of making it my own, something that I want to do. So I've been using this stamp set, which is Gobble Till You Wobble, and it's a little bit older. It was just from last year. I'm not sure if it's still available or not, but I really like this turkey, and I'm thinking maybe if I fussy cut him out, then I could kind of do something like this, and that could be my cluster instead of having a flower, and then I could stamp my sentiment right there, which I'm thinking maybe Gobble Till You Wobble would actually fit perfectly, and then he could go right over the top, and then I can make this a Thanksgiving card. So I think I'm going to do that for the next step of what I'm going to use here. So I'm going to go ahead and do those. Okay, and now I'm ready to stamp both my sentiment in green and also the turkey, which I stamped in black so that way I could color him in. And I am using my Shinhan and Tri-Blend markers to color in the turkey. They blend beautifully, so it works really well for a project like this. And then when I'm done coloring in my turkey, I am going to fussy cut him out so that I can pop him up in place of that cluster of flowers that you can see in the catalog. Since I'm not doing that, I want him to be able to be popped up the way that the flowers are. So I'm going to cut him out. Okay, Now that I have fussy cut out my turkey and I've got my sentiment stamped on there, I think I'm going to layer them like so. And I also like the idea of putting some of that gold thread behind it, which I do have somewhere. Here we go, which is that gold thread. So let's do that on there as well. Okay, now we're to the exciting part where everything is really starting to come together. So we're putting the sentiment down, and I put that sentiment about, I would say, halfway over on those pennant banners. And then, like I said, I'm going to put that gold thread down too, so that way it's kind of showing, peeking out from underneath. I'm going to pop up the turkey with a little bit of foam tape and get him ready to go too. Now this gold thread I see in a lot of projects, and it looks really cool. And not just gold thread, there's silver or, you know, string or any kind of embroidery thread really. And the idea is to have like a perfectly messy little bunch of it, which seems like it would be really easy to do, but I have noticed this takes a little bit of practice to get it so that it looks good but yet still looks really chaotic and messy too. It's kind of like having a messy hair bun, right? Like there is a little bit of an art to it. So hopefully it looks okay. I think it does. I put it down first with a little bit of adhesive, and then I'm going to put the turkey over top with his foam tape so that he hides where it is stuck down to the card. And then that way there's just kind of like a little jumble peeking out from underneath. And so we're nearly done. Yay! The last thing I did, which was actually off camera, was I took some of the wooden hearts that are available right now and I added them to the front. Here you can see this is the original that is in the catalog on page 8 for September and October, and there it is with that artwork tip of using the clear embossing powder to, you know, random stamp your own cardstock background. And that was my take on page 8 of the September and October catalog. I hope you had fun creating with me today, and if you do your own idea book inspiration, I would love to see what it is. Feel free to check out the links below and have a lovely day.